Hey, what's up, fellas? How you doing, man? Antonelli here.
In lieu of Gerrit Cole's massive deal with the New York Yankees, actually, tangent time, something that's totally underplayed about this is that he's going to have to cut his hair and clean up and shave his beard. He's probably going to lose 2 to 3 miles an hour. But before then, let's do a breakdown on Gerrit Cole with the Astros. Hope you like it, and here it is.
What's up, guys? You asked for it, and we have it here. A Gerrit Cole mechanical breakdown, and what we're going to focus on the most is his lower half. Not that his upper half is bad, but I just love his lower half. And let's roll this thing to the peak of his leg lift, which is about right there. So we get into this position, and what I love about his leg lift more than anything is just how simple it is. His leg comes to him, as we see here. A lot of players at every level, I feel, have issues with their front leg being too dynamic within their motion. And to simply put this is the front leg comes off of the mound in order for our back leg to do its thing, in order for our back leg to work, in order for us to go and move towards home plate. If our front leg doesn't come off the ground, we're just going to trip over ourselves. We're trying to move in a lateral fashion. Now imagine trying to move in a lateral fashion with your front leg cemented into the ground. You can't. So our front leg just comes off the ground so we can start moving, so we can start working. And I really discourage guys who have such a dynamic move with their front leg. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be good, and it doesn't mean you can't be great, but it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to be consistent when our front leg is violently dynamic. So I really love how simple his front leg is. It's just straight up and down, and his leg goes to him as opposed to maybe his torso going to his leg, or it being just dynamic and just all over the place. Just as an example, if you remember El Duque, Orlando Hernandez, or Dontrell Willis, they had a really, really dynamic front leg. And they were really good at it. They made it all the way there. But there's a reason why you only see a handful of those guys in the pros who have a super dynamic front leg. It's because it's really difficult to be consistent with a really dynamic front leg. So that's one. Two, when we get to the peak of our leg lift, okay, he doesn't get to a true balance point. And I'm sure we've all seen the balance drill, right? How long can you stand and how long can you stay upright on your drive leg? In all essence, that doesn't really happen. Elite throwers don't make that move. Elite throwers, as their leg is coming up, again, we lift our leg so we can start moving. They start moving as their leg is coming up into their body. Their leg comes to them and their backside starts working. So I love this shift in weight. It's slow, it's controlled, but it's starting the progress and a positive progress towards home plate, which is where we're trying to throw the ball. Okay, we can't be too vertical with our back leg. So if we're nice and tall here, it's going to be really difficult for us to be very dynamic in a vertical fashion and then all of a sudden start shooting laterally towards our target. Okay, it takes a very special kind of athlete to do something like that, but even still, special athletes don't do that. Special athletes do this move here, which is just before its peak of ascent, we start shifting our weight into the inside part of our back foot, and we start going. Now let's talk back leg here, since we just talked front leg. The back leg is great. The back leg, he's sitting into that back hip. His upper half is starting to coil around his back hip. So we see that little coil, that kind of counter action. I drew the line over, so let's draw it again. So our lower half is starting to go in descent towards home plate, and our upper half is going to resist that move and coil around our back hip here through pelvis control, femur control, all that type of stuff. But really, it just requires a lot of body awareness and a lot of understanding of what we're trying to accomplish as we're trying to move to home plate. And I really love this move from him here. So we're going to keep bringing this thing going, and we're going to get to the bottom of our delivery. And we get to the bottom of our delivery, and let's go back and forth here. The synchronization of that front leg and his hands. Love his hands. His hands are breaking middle of the chest, more towards probably the S and the T of his uniform. So arm side, than anything as his leg is coming down. So we're just getting tremendous timing here. And he has a very simple approach to it. I think you can be really consistent with your handbrake and the timing of this move when you're around the S and the T. You're in the middle of your chest and maybe slightly staggered towards your arm side. That's a really good starting point for any pitcher. It's going to be really difficult for you to achieve proper timing of the lower and the upper half at handbrake when our hands are all over the place, maybe too high, too low. Again, it's going to take a lot of repetition, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to do that. Not to say that you can't, and not to say that you can't ever figure it out, but do yourself a favor and put yourself in positive positions, which is middle of the chest, slightly staggered to the arm side, and as this leg's coming down, I'm starting to handbrake. And it's a very, very simple move. Let's take this thing to front foot. So fair to say front foot gets planted into the ground about right here, this frame here. And we see that beautiful separation of that upper half resisting the forward move. So our hip, my front hip is popped open, my hips are starting to move, and then my arm is still in a great arm cock position. It's still in its way to lay back. My upper half is resisting my front side. You see that wrinkle? We see the wrinkle in the uniform here. That is a great sign. Whenever you're watching, guys, look for this. It's a great sign of an upper half resisting the forward movement of the lower half. It's very much like hitting. So in pitching, we just need to do exactly the same thing. We need to resist that move. So he does a great job staying back and separating. This is hip to shoulder separation, everybody. To anybody that needed a visual example of what hip to shoulder separation looks like, it's this. And Gerrit Cole, does a tremendous job here. Now let's focus in on arm and do a big circle here. Hopefully that covers everything. So as our arm goes forward, let's get a bigger circle. There she is. So at front foot, my arm still is working back into layback. So once my torso starts rotating forward, my arm hits that 90-degree mark. So if this right here, if this is 0, draw a line there. Let's get here. And this is 90. The second front foot happens, we should be somewhere in between that figure, which is right there. Because my arm continues to get into layback as my torso starts its rotation towards home plate. So my torso is rotating, my arm gets to layback. He has great timing, and now let's get this thing to pitch release. We have the pitch release. A couple things to focus on pitch release. Front leg block. Is my front hip, my front leg blocking and firming up at pitch release? You want that to be happening at pitch release. That means that all the energy that you just produced from the backside is starting to trickle up from the bottom on up and comes out of your hand and into the baseball. We need that front leg to firm and that front hip to stop so that our torso can come through the zone and have a great lateral tilt to it. So if our torso is here, for example, this is horizontal, right? As my front leg hits the ground and I start firming up that front leg, look at my torso get into more lateral tilt towards pitch release. This is proper extension right here. So we get to this point here. That's pitch release, fair to say. That's proper extension there. Being able to get my torso over my front leg as my front leg is blocking is proper pitch extension or throw extension here. And you just acquired a great forward trunk tilt towards home plate. And now let's finish the delivery with a follow through and kicking around his front hip. So look at his backside. His backside, as we follow through, goes around that front hip. Okay, allow your energy to travel around that front hip. You don't have to be all traditional and squared up, ready to field a baseball like maybe a Zach Greinke or Greg Maddux. That doesn't work for everybody. Most pitchers, the majority of pitchers, are going to be working around the front hip because when you're creating that much energy, you can't halt the energy too early. If you start halting the energy before pitch release, you're sacrificing miles an hour, you're sacrificing stuff, you're sacrificing action in order to land in a fielding position, when if you just allow yourself to accelerate through pitch release, we can work around our front hip and be more energy efficient within our delivery.